So with me today, you might recognise him from the world of iRacing. If you've watched any broadcasts on iRacing on RaceWhat TV or iRacing in general, also you might have heard him on live at the racetrack in real life on IMSA radio. And yeah, his name's Arjuna Kankapati. And first of all, Arjuna, it's nice to have you on.
Thanks, Ryan. Good to be here.
And yeah, how's life been treating you in not just the sim world but also real life? I think recently, towards the end of last year, you were a new addition to the team over at IMSA Radio.
Yeah, it's coming up on, or has been, a year since my first race with IMSA Radio. So being back at Laguna this past weekend was pretty special. Kind of thinking about everything that's changed in the last year. And realizing just how much more comfortable I've become, because I'll tell you what, I was nervous the first race and even the first practice session last year with IMSA Radio, so definitely crazy to think about how much more confident I am now.
Yeah, and if I'm correct, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think was it Laguna Seca that you made your first appearance on IMSA Radio?
Exactly, and back then it was sorry, excuse me, bit of a stuffy throat today. Back then it was just 90 minutes down the road from where I lived as well, so it was pretty cool just, popping in the car, didn't really have to travel too much. And yeah, that's kind of part of the reason it came about, actually, I think, as well, as, I was close to the racetrack, they needed someone, and right place, right time.
Yeah, I mean, we can dive into that in a little bit, but yeah, obviously, normally I would ask how you got into real life motorsport, but I think I'll switch it around and say, how did you first get into sim racing? How did your sim racing career or journey start? Was it kind of just something that you picked up, but say as a kid, like maybe playing like the old day PlayStations or old day consoles, maybe like more recently like the Xbox or the latest PlayStations?
So I think there's two phases to kind of, well, three actually, now that I think about it. Three phases to the journey into sim racing. The first part of it was when my parents got a PlayStation 2 bundle with F1 2001 the game, but it came with F1 2000 the DVD season review, and I probably burned out that disc watching it, which you couldn't really do. It wasn't like the tapes back in the day. I do remember VHS for the record. But yeah, that was probably the first start where I loved Mika Hakkinen. That was the guy that I kind of rooted for when I watched that DVD. And so then when I went to play 2001 and Mika took his sabbatical, which, he may come back next year to Formula One, you never know. But I looked for someone else, and Kimi Räikkönen obviously ended up being the Finn. So, I don't know, he became my guy. And so that was kind of my first phase in that journey. Second phase kind of came when I was in high school. And F1 2010 came out, which I think for a lot of people was kind of a great moment. I didn't have a sim rig, I didn't have a controller, I was playing on my keyboard, but that was my first kind of time getting into racing games seriously again. Dirt 2 was also around that time, I was jumping into that, Dirt 3, and we'll come back to that later, I'm sure, in our conversation. And then Phase 3 actually happened when I put on Reddit a post that I wanted to do the iRacing 24 Hours Le Mans, right when the GTE cars had come out, and from there, boy, things have unraveled.
Yeah, I remember. I'm trying to think what my first F1 game was. I played back in the. This is probably go back like the earlier PlayStations. I think it was the PS2 at the time that I used to play it all the time. And basically, I think I was the same as you. That I used to play the old. I can't remember the F1 game what it was called, but basically it had the what you were talking about, the real life season review DVDs, so you could go and like watch the onboards and watch like start of races and the end of races. And I'm similar to you. I used to watch them like crazy all the time, and I think I even watched them like loads of times to the point that I actually scratched the disc. I watched it that much because I was just so
yeah. You can do that.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
For sure.
You get addicted, but yeah, I think that's pretty much how I got into like basically not sim racing as such back then, but racing games. And then basically I progressed through like consoles, and then basically eventually I got into like PC games like I don't know if you've heard of it, like the Simbin, no, not Simbin, the Sim Studio, Race 07 and
Yep.
GTR2 and those sort of games. And I actually still have my GTR2 disc lying around somewhere, and so I might need to drag that out at some point in the future, or not, yeah, in the future, and maybe go down a nostalgia lane because yeah, yeah, I had so much fun playing that game as a teenager, and then after that, I think I progressed on to not R Factor, yeah, R Factor, and then basically R Factor 2, and then basically, yep, on iRacing at the moment, and been loving every second of it.
Yeah, it's crazy to think all of those different games because I've got Race 07 still in my Steam library somewhere, so I can go and download it like you. I do actually have Dirt 2 installed on my Steam Deck, Dirt 3 installed on my gaming PC, so that when I want to play it, I can. So these are things that I still go back and when I'm on the road. Dirt 2 and Forza Horizon 5, those are the two things that I play on my flights when I get a chance.
Yeah, and then basically, but obviously, you like I mentioned, you're on iRacing, and how much time do you spend on iRacing? And if you get a chance, what sort of things do you like to race? Is there anything in particular that you like racing, or is it just kind of just jump on and see whatever catches your eye?
Genuinely, I don't think I've done an official race in about 4 years. Maybe it's three. I think the last thing I did was I did the Moonhead Martinsville 24.
Well, I
Uh,
remember that.
I started the race for my team. I might have done an All Star Porsche that was also recent, but basically since I started commentating, my rig sat and gathered dust. And so when I was moving last year, I sold my rig. I still have my Simucube and my pedals, so if I want to, I can still, SimLab or whoever, buy a sim rig and throw it all back together. But as terrible as this might sound, I've commentated on so much sim racing because, for a couple of years I was doing 300 broadcasts a year, and I was doing that for 3-4 years, and it kind of grinds on you. So I don't really want to spend too much time sim racing, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I like sim racing still. I'll commentate on it plenty. Looking forward to another season of IMSA esports later this year. But it's one of those things where I've kind of how's the right way to phrase this? Because people are going to think that I don't like sim racing. I just don't. I wasn't enjoying sim racing in the first place, and that's why I started commentary. But that's a long time ago. That's when iRacing's tire model was the ice model, and you had to do outlaps at 30 kilometers an hour. And I got so irritated with it. That's really why I started commentating. If you want to get into the weeds of things, so yeah, I don't enjoy my sim racing as much as I once did.
And then you talk about getting into commentating. But where did the I guess the interest for that say? How did that first come about? Was it were you watching the broadcasts and the on iRacing and thinking I want to try commentating and see how you would get on, and then basically what sort of process did you go through to start commentating? Did you go to like basically like sim racing broadcast companies and say like that I would be interested in commentating? Have you got any, I guess not vacancies, but basically is there any chance that I could maybe get some experience?
Yes, to answer that last part. But the way I guess it kind of started was when I decided I didn't want to do so much sim racing. This was right at the start of 2020. I just started doing some IndyCar racing. I joined an IndyCar team, Powerslide Motorsports. And I said, you know what? If I'm not going to race the Monday night SOFs, why don't I just stream them on my Twitch channel instead? Because I'd been doing a little bit of streaming of my races. I've still got some of those races on my YouTube, which is funny to go back and watch now in hindsight, thinking back to the try-hard that I used to be. But yeah, I just thought, you know what? Let me give this a go. I bought SDK Gaming, which I think is pretty simple for anyone to pick up pretty quickly and throw a broadcast together. I got some music downloaded. I figured out how to work OBS, and we were off to the races, right? I did a few of those for a couple of weeks, and then COVID. The world shut down. and the IndyCar iRacing Challenge is, I think, what it ended up being called. But they were only streaming the first race on NBC in the US, and so anyone who wanted to watch it outside the US was going to be out of luck. And so I figured, you know what? I can do this. Let me go ahead and do this. And I streamed. We had quite a few people watching, as you can imagine. I got my teammates to sit there and be analysts with me. It was quite funny. I still can go back and watch it. If you're in the US, you can't, because it was blocked, because obviously NBC had the rights. But we had enough viewers that it was like, kind of a light bulb moment for me. I think we did one or two more of them, obviously, as those races continued. But at some point I was like, let me message Hugo at RaceSpot. And basically, like you said, do you need help? Can I help you out in any way? Because I would love to gain some experience. And obviously, just like all the IndyCar people had come in for the challenge, everyone from Real World Racing was coming to Hugo, RaceSpot, and all the other broadcasters and saying, can you cover our series? And so Hugo went, yes, please, Arjuna, come and help us, because not only are you willing to commentate, and at that point I was like, I've done some sim racing at a high enough level. I had done SEO, which back in the day was the league, in my opinion, the endurance racing league on iRacing to be a part of. So I felt like I could add some color commentary to the broadcasts. But Hugo was like, if you're willing to direct as well, there's even more opportunity for you to come in and help. And so he gave me a week of training, maybe not even that, and then said, Arjuna, I need a break because I've been worked to the bone for a month and a half with all these real world people coming in. You're going to run these different broadcasts and go figure it out. So that's kind of how things started in sim racing commentary. Right place, right time, which is, I think, the motto a lot of people will say. But I had the interest to kind of explore it right before COVID. I knew Hugo because I'd worked with him to broadcast some of the leagues that I had organized previously, and he needed me as well, so it just kind of worked out pretty nicely.
Yeah, and excuse me, you're talking about the IndyCar Challenge as well, so for anyone that's maybe listening, or listens to this at some point, the IndyCar Challenge during COVID was pretty much, say, like real life IndyCar drivers, so maybe say like your Scott Dixons, Santino Ferrucci, who else?
Well, Lando Norris until he got crashed out by
Yeah.
Simon Pagenaud.
Yeah, Simon Pagenaud as well. Forgot about him. Who else? I think we even had Dale Earnhardt at one point.
Yep, I got the diecast of the car he ran, yeah.
And they also Kyle Busch as well. Kyle Busch, I remember that very well because I think there was an intro video showing him he wasn't using like the traditional like open wheel with the paddles. He was using like a traditional like stock car wheel, and he's like, we don't need flappy paddles. And I'm like, dude, you're gonna get eaten up. So
amazing.
But I remember that series so well because I think it was actually the real life commentators that were calling that race the series as well. At the time when it was on NBC, it was Lee Diffie, Townsend Bell, and Paul Tracy. I want to say.
Yep.
I thought at the time when COVID first kept hit, I thought it was so cool seeing real life real life drivers getting involved on iRacing because it kind of, in my opinion, it gave iRacing like loads of publicity and made there was like loads of new members coming in as well. So I think from like both sides for iRacing and real life drivers, for real life drivers, it keeps them sharp, even if it's just on a sim or on a game. And for iRacing, it gets them more publicity. And I think with NBC as well, it kind of, I guess it helped like Diffie, Diffie, Bell, and Tracy keep sharp with their commentating. Just something like they're not getting rusty, if you like.
Yeah, I'd like to pretend when you're that experienced as Lee. Lee is in particular. I don't want to diminish Townsend and Paul, but Lee's got such a great career through the years, right? All the stuff that he's called. You'd like to think that you don't get rusty, but there's never any harm in getting some repetitions. But I think the most important thing about that was having representation, right? Because otherwise, drivers and their sponsors kind of sat on the sidelines, no real way for them to connect with their fans. A lot of whom are sat at home and looking for entertainment as well, right? So I do also think that when we look back on not just iRacing with the IndyCar, but also with NASCAR and what they did with Fox, I think there is something to be said about, for a lot of people, that was not the easiest of times, right? And so that's the kind of entertainment which you can kind of sit back, watch Dale Earnhardt racing an IndyCar, that's pretty cool, or, you know, even just racing a stock car once again, right? So I think there was an element of that as well, where it was nice for the drivers to be able to come in and give us some relief too.
Yeah, with NASCAR as well, I think, but obviously say Fox were covering that series as well. And then I believe as well when the NASCAR series first started, you had Jeff Gordon and Clint Bowyer racing as well, and I thought that was funny because you could tell by both of them racing side by side, like in the same room, they were making fun of each other. And I think for people at home, it kind of gave them a bit of a kind of like a lift up, if you like, kind of like through like bad times. Obviously through COVID, no one could really go outside or do anything that like they would usually do. So I think what Fox done as well with NASCAR, it kind of gave people like something to watch and gave them a bit of a lift up and get them out of that dark period for me. So I think through COVID, like yeah, there wasn't any real racing, but there was still racing going on in the virtual world, and some people might say, "Oh, sim racing, it's not real racing," but it might just be like virtual. But like the way I look at it is virtual racing, but the racing is still very much real.
Yeah, and I do also think, you know, same with IMSA, they had the iRacing Pro thing that with the GTE cars, the GTLM, I should say. There was something about that period which, you know, as I'm coming up and learning about broadcasting just with sim racing, at no point am I thinking at this stage, this is going to be a future career for me, right? There's no even inkling of that. It's I still want to be involved in sim racing, and now I can kind of see what broadcasting can do, right? It's about telling stories, you can uplift people with some of those stories as well, and so that was cool for me, just to kind of see what the series was able to do.
Yeah, and then basically, like you say, you got involved with race spot as well. First off with commentating, and obviously you contacted Hugo, and like basically as time went on, you started getting more opportunities with race spot as well. As I check my notes, feel free to correct me. I think you've commentated on the Ivra Endurance series. You've commentated on the I'm trying to think what it's called now. Is it the Racing Prodigy series for? I think you actually hosted that on TV, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Being on cable TV, that was something where I definitely took a picture of the first episode and was like, "Hey, who's that guy?"
Yeah, I mean, when you got to do that, what was the feeling like? Did you think was it one of those like pinch yourself moments? Like basically, I'm actually getting to do like cover this in real life. Which is something that you maybe thought, but like you say, at one point you probably would never have dreamed of. But and also, I believe you got to call that alongside. Let me check my notes. Brian, is it Brian Till?
Yeah, no, and I've got to say, pinch me is hard to describe when you're sat across from Brian Till, right? I mean, I didn't realize this until I went back and rewatched the clip after I'd worked with him. But Corvette and Porsche at Laguna Seca all those years ago, when they're beating and banging off each other coming to the line, Brian Till was on the call, right? So it's like he's been a voice that I've recognized for so long. So pinch me is, I think, truly the way I would describe it. I think the way it came about again was right place, right time with Race Spot. They being Racing Prodigy, David Cook is fantastic. He used to work at Mazda and ran racing there, and obviously Mazda has the shootout. We had people like Pablo Lopez go from iRacing to that shootout, right? So David's someone who's seen what sim racing can do. And I think he also, when we started broadcasting some of our esports tournaments, had this idea that, wait, maybe the talent who are calling these races can go from sim to real as well. And so he was very much, I think, alongside of the entire Racing Prodigy team, part of why I was there, alongside of Brian. I was the sim racing guy, bringing the stories of these people and able to articulate why it was cool that they were there and what their skill sets were able to do. And then you had Brian Till with all his experience in racing. I mean, he's kind of seen it all, right? He's been there as a driver, commentator, but a lot of people may not know this, race director as well, still right now with SRO GT4. So he's kind of got a perspective that not many have. And so that's such a great insight to add to broadcast, right? And so we ping pong off each other really nicely. I think we had Katie Kyle for the TV part of our broadcast as well, who was great with getting some of the interviews, kind of like I do now with IMSA Radio. It was just so cool, and you know, we're commentating on some great racing as well, and it's on TV. And for that to be my first introduction into motorsports, I filmed all of that before Laguna Seca, but it aired after Laguna Seca with IMSA. So technically, I still think Racing Prodigy is the first real-world motorsports thing I ever did. So, you know, it doesn't, I think, get much harder than that to kind of live up to expectations moving forward, right? To go straight to something like that was really cool.
Yeah, and when you were covering that, was it like when you were watching people racing those cars? Was there anyone that stood out for you that you think I think he or she could go on to basically do well in real life racing? So basically, or I don't know if that question makes sense or not, but basically it was.
No, it does. It 100% does, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I want to tell you a story because I think this kind of will illustrate the success of what Racing Prodigy is looking to do. When I first met Garrett Lowe at Prodigy Week, it was the first time I'd actually really heard of him. Obviously, he's eNASCAR driver through the years, but I'm not much of an eNASCAR follower. His attitude, the way he worked through the different things that Racing Prodigy were looking to assess you on, it impressed me in a way that not many people have done. And so when Florian, who's the team manager of BS Plus Competition, when Florian sent me a message saying, I've just got an eNASCAR team for next year, I need 2 drivers, can you give me some recommendations? Well, the first name I gave him was Garrett Lowe. And now Garrett is racing Euro NASCAR with Florian in a BS competition car. So Garrett's the first name that I'll highlight. But Lawrence Beerton, so many of those drivers I think have futures. Camden Hibbett, he's another one who's coming from Season 1, but we've got Season 2 drivers who haven't had a chance to get into the cars just yet that I can already, right now, guarantee you, have got a potential for a career if they're given that opportunity. So I think what's more remarkable is, and I think Max Pappas, Brian Till, and a lot of the other people that were there with motorsports backgrounds might back me up on. What's more remarkable is how many of these people have the talent and just need the opportunity, right? That's what we're seeing, right? And that's where sim racing, I think, is going to grow more and more. You look at someone like Chris Lullum. You and I have seen him so much in sim racing, but now in GT World Challenge, he's getting those opportunities in a GT3 car through the Verstappen Racing program, right? So I think it's only a matter of time before more and more people awaken to where the potential is and now start to hone in on that a little bit more.
Yeah, and for people that will listen to this at some point, they might think they might ask, who's Chris Lawlem? Yeah, I think just a short explanation. Chris Lawlem is pretty much a part of what was a Team Redline, I think, and basically they got the name changed to Verstappen Sim Racing, I believe. It's Chris Lawlem came up through sim racing on iRacing, and then basically I think it was last year was his first, or I can't remember exactly, but was last year his first year in real life racing? And I know that
So he has done some real world racing, and I think that is something to recognize, right? That there are some people, even like a Lauren Heinrich, because Lauren's
Exactly.
another one of the poster childs of this pathway. But Lauren Heinrich was another one of these drivers like Chris who did do some karting, maybe some beginning into car racing as well, but they just didn't have the budget to move forward from there, right? So that's where sim racing came in. Lauren did a couple of years there before he was able to get some more budget to go and run Porsche Sport Cup, and that's when he's exploded. And we're recording this on a day when it's just been announced that he's going to be racing full time next year for Porsche Penske. So that's really great, right? It shows where sim racing can bridge the gap, even for those with the initial rooting, the grounding in real motorsports. And Chris is the same. I think Chris did some racing before, came back to sim racing to focus in a little bit more, and then went and did some radicals. So now doing GT3s. He won with Max last year in NLS 9. So I think both of them really show where sim racing has that potential to be spotted, right? Even if you've had those opportunities, we can twist the story both ways, right? It's great. I love it.
Yeah, and I think as well that Chris Lawlom last year, he also won the 24 hours of Spa in the Gold Cup class as well, in his first attempt as well. So I think that's pretty cool. I think it kind of gives credibility to sim racing. It, yeah, if you don't have the budget to go like karting or open wheel racing, for example, you can still use sim racing to find those opportunities. And I think what I like, some people give Max Verstappen stick because of like just obviously because they like some people think he races a bit too aggressively, I guess you could say. But I respect Max for taking people and kind of like guiding them through and giving them the opportunity because I think I don't know if you all agree with me or not. Max is a die-hard sim racing fan.
Yes.
If he can get his hands on anything like sim racing, real life, whatever, he'll race it because he's just a racing addict.
Yeah, I think I'll be careful because if a Max Verstappen fan hears this, they may come after me on social media. I think Max Verstappen is great. Like I genuinely have so much respect for him, his talent, and what he does for sim racing. But like you said, maybe pushes the line on driving standards a little bit beyond where I think is reasonable. And in some ways, that is also a detriment to sim racing, right? I think what we have seen in the last few years is a regression in some driving standards in some public official iRacing series. And I think that's partly because of where Formula One has gone. Now, that is also because Formula One's rules around passing are not
Consistent.
consistent. They're not necessarily the most wisely written either, in my opinion. But yeah, I think Max for sim racing, though, going back to your original question, and bypassing that side path that I was going down, there is no better supporter, right? To have the story of Max winning a race on the sim and then going and racing a Formula One race the same weekend, that's the kind of stuff that you don't get better publicity than, right? And I commentated on the NLS qualifier races a couple of weekends ago, and one of the things that I did mention is, Max is the reason why the digital Nürburgring Landstracken series, they updated their rules now so that you can get your part of your permit to race in the real world from the DNLS. So there is a lot of good that Max Verstappen is doing for sim racing, not just for his team, right? Because I think obviously what he's done for Chris is remarkable, and he's given Chris this opportunity that he has taken with both hands. And I mean, Chris has proven why he's given the opportunity in the first place. But when you go and you see that Max is also making things like the DNLS change its rules to make it easier to get your permit at the ring, that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also I believe that Max is going to race in the Nürburgring 24 as well. With I think it's his own team, isn't it? Or is it being run by? It's his own team, but it's being run by Wingward, I think. Yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, I like that Max is racing in the Nürburgring 24, but there's sort of I don't know. I mean, it's cool that he's racing in the Nürburgring 24, but I think I've heard a lot of like a lot of fans with different opinions saying that it's good, but on the other hand, that it might they were talking about maybe changing the paddock rules or something like that for like because like the way fans interact with drivers or teams or something like that. And I think it's a bit. I
I
I'm
don't think they're going to do that. But what they have done is because the race used to have 170 cars as recent as I think 10 years ago, but last few years it's been capped at 150. What they were able to do was make the field 161 cars because obviously with Max entering, I think there's a couple of other teams that wanted to enter the race as well. So I think that's what they've had to do is they probably crammed in a few more teams. But I think the joy of NLS, and it's probably the same as it is in IMSA, where the fans have got so much access, that is what makes the sport, that part of the sport, so great. It's what I tell everybody who asks me about IMSA events. I tell them the only thing that a credential, like a VIP pass, will get you that you don't get with your general ticket is you can't come onto pit lane during the race itself, which, that's a pretty cool experience, don't get me wrong. But that shows you the level of access that IMSA has really given, right? That, outside of some of those hospitality areas with the fancy food, you can go where you want, you can roam around, you can go into the garages, and then obviously the grid walk, you can make my life difficult by making it so congested that I can't run up and down and try and grab some interviews like Martin Brundle tries to do. So I think I hope there's no changes to those rules because I was watching Mark Urban's vlog of the N24 last year. He just posted it actually this past weekend. The grid walk when there were just teams and drivers, let alone fans on the grid, it was busy enough. And so I can only imagine it must be so chaotic, so congested. But it's you're surrounded by friends, and as someone who is a bit socially anxious, does not like to be in large crowds by any means. Those packed grid walks are about the only time I feel comfortable being around lots of people.
Yeah, I'm sort of similar as well. Basically, I get the sometimes if I'm in big crowds, I get like not like bad anxiety, but I kind of get like start feeling on edge and sort of thing. Like if there's like loads of people like around me and that, I'm like, yeah, I need to get out of here and kind of just find somewhere where there's like less. I don't know less people, but it's more kind of like more open where you can like walk about and not having to worry about being in big packs, big crowds. So I'm sort of similar like that as well. But you talk about IMSA as well. I'll be over in the Daytona next January for the Daytona 24th, which is my first visit. So I'm really looking forward to that because I do like that, like the fact that you can get access and be up like close to, like not in the garages, but you can be up close and like look at the cars and watch what the teams are doing, and I find that so like cool.
I mean, you can get right to the front of the garage, right? So you can get about as close as anyone should really be when they're working on a car anyway. And that's something that I sometimes find difficult is trying to stay out of the way when all the crew are doing their job. And I probably have been in the way, so I apologize to any team members who I've made their life a little bit more difficult in the year I've been on pit lane. But Daytona's great. This year was obviously the first year that I was working, but I've gone the 2 previous years as a fan, and you should at the start of the race, in my opinion, go up to the top of the grandstands, right around where turn 1 is, because then you'll see the cars fly down off the banking, through into the infield. But the great thing about Daytona, which I don't think is true of any road course that I am aware of, but from that vantage point, you can see everything that happens on the track. So you'll watch the GTP cars down to the Le Mans chicane for the first time as the GTDs are coming back onto the banking, right, with their split start. It's a special place, in my opinion, to watch the start of the race. Then you'll go on the Ferris wheel at night. You do have to do it. It is one of those Daytona traditions. Trying to think what else is really important. Honestly, I spent the 2 times I went as a fan, Spent too much time in the grandstand because it's one of my favorite places to watch a race from. And then inside of that hairpin that comes back onto the banking, you should... Next year will be the same LMP2 cars, but it's the year after, which will be the new generation. But the LMP2 cars on downshifts, Ryan, it is...
Yeah, I can't remember who told me. Someone said like the downshifts. It sounds like what was it? What was it they described it as? It sounds like backfire or something. Like no, not backfire, gunfire.
Yes, I was trying not to describe it like that, but I don't think there's a better way to.
Yeah.
It's just such a. Honestly, the only better sound than that, I think, is the Valkyrie's engine. It is that good a noise to sit there and just hear the LMP2 cars downshifting. So spend some time there. I was listening to the episode you did with Joe. So you're going there with your father, right? Is that correct?
No, I'm going there.
Joe's going to go there with his father.
Yeah, Joe's going with his father.
Okay.
My plan is to travel over by myself, but I'm meeting up with a couple of actually, excuse me. I'm meeting up with some teammates from satellite racing. So, the plan is for me to fly over by myself and then basically meet them at the airport, or basically get picked up and then pretty much just see what happens. So, but yeah, I'm so looking forward to it because Daytona's a race that I've wanted to go and watch for a long time, and also some of my friends as well that I chat to sometimes, they go to like loads of IMSA races, and they said when you're at Daytona, I don't know if they were trying to wind me up or not, but they were saying, "Oh, you should visit the Waffle House."
Well, there is always.
I'm like, oh, okay, but
there is, yeah. I mean, a Waffle House experience is not bad. It's not Charlie Brown's at Indianapolis, which is a different kind of experience with all the racing history there. But yeah, the reason why I was asking is because you then have to make the decision of if you want to try and stay up for all 24 hours.
That's my plan.
Okay, now, I don't recommend it. I do not recommend it, but this is probably the easiest of the 24-hour races to stay up for. Now, why is that? Because of the time that it starts. It starts at like 1 in the afternoon, whereas the Nürburgring 24, Spa, and Le Mans, they're all like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So you have to stay up till 4 or 5 for the race start, and then the 24 hours. If you're up for it, it's not I have not been able to do it. I will be honest. The 2 times I was there as a fan, I needed to go and get some sleep. This year when I was working, I had to get some sleep because I wanted to have some sanity at the end of the race, which I did not, and I asked Nikki Team some of the worst questions that I've ever asked anybody, so I apologize, Nikki. But yeah, good luck to you. You're going to have to tell me how that goes. I want a picture from every hour, Ryan, to see your state as you go through the night and back into the morning. I
was going to say, I don't know if I should post a picture of myself on social media, like like at the start of the race, the middle of the race, the middle of the the middle of the night, and then because honestly, some people I know that were at Daytona this year, they ended up posting a picture of themselves in the middle of the night, and I kid you not, they looked like they were just about to like basically like drop out and like sleep from like they were basically like I can't remember what one of them said. I think one of them said they described it as being, what is it, delirious. So
yeah, I remember. I don't remember which of the years it was when I was there as a fan, but I remember getting back to the track just before sunrise, going to meet with friends who had planned to stay up the entire race, and just going down to them and taking a picture of them fast asleep because they had been unable to stay awake. So yeah, delirious is probably the best description for it.
I mean, I think they had a picture. I think I would need to go back and look, but they had a picture of them to like I think they were in the grandstand or in the paddock area, like sitting down, and basically they had like their hood like pulled up and that like I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm in for a fun time at Daytona. So yeah, well, I say my plan is to stay up for 24 hours, but knowing my luck, I'll probably end up falling asleep in the middle of the night for maybe like an hour or so.
It's not the worst thing in the world, okay? The great thing about IMSA races is that, let's be real, survive 23 hours. The last hour is where you really win it.
Uh, I was going to say, I guess if it does get foggy again, which I hope it doesn't,
Oh,
I could. I'd probably just jinx it now, but I could use that to get some sleep, I guess. But
well,
yeah,
we got the fog, but the previous few years it has been bitterly cold, so it was kind of a trade-off. And I think I personally was much happier being warm because the first year I was there, it was so cold. I had 4 layers on, and I was still just not prepared for. People think Florida is all sunshine, but no, in
no,
January it can be bitterly cold, and Daytona's on the beach as well, so it implied Daytona Beach as the city name. But yeah, it can be brutal.
and then also as well with the with sim racing, has it led to you getting the real life opportunities? So obviously, like the racing prodigy the series, you got an opportunity to do that. But have you had any other opportunities as well? Obviously, you've like I say, you've been a recent addition to the team at IMSA Radio. So yeah, as I check my notes, you've I think you've called the races for the Porsche Cup North America Series, Mustang Challenge, and uh, I'm I'm trying to remember something else that what's slipped my mind. But obviously, you've had opportunities to call various series. So how do you find that? Do you find that when you commentate in real life, can you transfer the stuff that you've learned over to say iRacing, for example, and or is it the other way around that you could what you learn in iRacing you can transfer to real life commentating?
There's definitely stuff that you carry over. There's no question about that. I guess there's two different questions. So I'll start by answering the sim racing leading to real world opportunities. And yeah, I think, my IMSA, my path to IMSA is not one that I recommend to many, which is back in, it would have been the end of 2021. I had a chat with Florian, who is not just the team manager for BS Plus competition, but he's also the big boss. I was trying to come up with the best way to describe him, but he's got so many crazy ideas that big boss doesn't really do him justice because he's such an energetic force for sim racing. But yeah, with VCO, I basically messaged him and went, "Do you think there's maybe a chance that IMSA may want to do an esports series?" To which he said, "Let me reach out and I'll get back to you." And eventually he got back to me and said, "Yeah, there's interest. There's what can we do?" And that led to the first IMSA Esports Global Championship back in 2022, where it was all run through VCO on the sporting and media side, and that included the broadcast being done by RaceBot. So it was very much a labor of my love, and I do genuinely mean that. I put in a lot of time into that series. That included a lot of effort with the race control team that we had at the time to try and build a safety car process and everything. We tried to do some like pre-race videos with drivers trying to showcase their personalities a little bit more, which is always something that's difficult in sim racing. You'll ask them submit a video response that's answers these 5 questions, and I've always tried to have one funny one. I remember one of them was make the noise of your engine, and only Mac Backham gave us the best video response, and we only got like 2 responses to that. So it's always been difficult, but it was such a great experience, I've got to say. Working with Max Rosier, who's continued to be the champion of esports within IMSA since 2022. I think we delivered a really good championship first time out. Obviously, we had issues. We had a big issue at Laguna Seca with how we had tried to do some safety car stuff. But, in a high-level series like this, when we try and do things outside of what iRacing offers, that's the risk that you take on. 2022, championship goes well, but it was also the year that I worked with Porsche in person for the first time. Scott DeVault, who works at Porsche USA, I don't actually know how they found out about me, I'll be honest, because this was at the point where I didn't really have a show reel. I wasn't posting on social media that I'm a commentator. But they found me. Actually, maybe I do know. Maybe it was Nicholas Krellenberg, who works at Porsche on the headquarters side in gaming and esports. He's a former Forza world champion. But yeah, I got to go and work in person at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which, for someone who's an IndyCar fan, was pretty special. Jeff Gordon was racing in Carrera Cup North America. But maybe most importantly to the story, John Hindorf was commentating on Carrera Cup North America, and so I met him in person for the first time. Obviously, someone that RaceSpot had done some work with for iRacing special events, so he knew who I was, and now put the face to the name and the voice. And so continue running IMSA Esports, 23, 24. I've had a couple of contact points with John and Eve at Radio Show Limited just to say, if there are any opportunities, I'd love to be a part of whatever you have. And there was one or two close times where it almost happened. But then I got a message on Facebook, which I'm terrible at checking my messages, like really terrible. And Eve had messaged me going, Arjuna, and I think it might have all been in caps, check your WhatsApp. And so I go off to my WhatsApp. You can tell I have all my notifications turned off for most of these apps. Go check my WhatsApp, and lo and behold, Eve's asking me, am I free to go and work at Laguna Seca? And obviously, Shay Adam had been the previous IMSA pit lane reporter. And when she left, I think there was a bit of a hole that needed filling. For Daytona and Sebring, because the Radio Show Limited team are on site, it kind of works out. They don't really need an extra pit reporter. It's their regular team. But then you get to the regular part of the season, and then you need a pit reporter. You need someone who's there, because John, sometimes he's in London, sometimes he's wherever, and Ryan Marine is usually in Indy. And they're both great. They're wonderful commentators, wonderful people, but they're not at the track. And so that's where the pit reporter's job comes in. And so I guess IMSA and Eve had a conversation. Someone had thought, Arjuna's in the Bay Area. He's local to Laguna Seca. Why don't we try him out and see how it goes? And so, again, right place, right time. I check my WhatsApp message. I send her back the message that, yes, I would be free. Just let me know what you need. She did check, do you have a fire suit? To which I said yes, because I'd done a Lemons race 8 years earlier or whatever it was, and so it was still certified, and that was it. I got my first opportunity with IMSA in the real world.
And then, how have you found being part of IMSA Radio? I mean, you've been there for, I guess, basically, but you say you've been there for a while now. How do you find it? Like, how do you find the how can I describe it? The atmosphere. Is it a family feel?
Oh, the best way to put this is I felt very lonely at Laguna Seca this past weekend. And I hope you'll clip this, by the way. This, of all the things to clip and put on social media, this is probably the things to clip. So I'll repeat that, and I'll keep going. But I felt lonely at Laguna Seca because it was the first time in 4 previous races that I was by myself. At Sebring, we had, the whole team, Peter, Ryan, John, and Eve. At Daytona, we had them, plus Neil Cole, Bruce Jones, Duncan Vincent, and Peter Snowden. So it was a big team as well. Petit, it was back to the John, Eve, Ryan, and Peter. And even at Indy, Ryan lives in Indy, so he was there, and it was nice having another part of my team on site. So yeah, I genuinely felt lonely. It's not because the rest of the IMSA media center wasn't great, and that's where actually it made me feel better. I had some great chats with the photographers and the videographers that I was sat next to in the media center. That kind of made me feel a little less lonely. But we have such a fun time both on air and off air, and I hope people can kind of hear that from our from how things go on the broadcast. I think we all bring something different to the team, and I think that's what makes it so unique as well, right? We all have our different perspectives on racing, but we all love it at the same time, and so it's cool. And to be with people like, okay, let's start with Peter Mackay, someone that you and I have worked with a lot in the sim racing world, one of the loveliest people that I know, period. Ryan Marine is also one of the loveliest people in the world, and one of the best commentators in the world. There's no question about that in my mind. He deserves all the opportunities that anyone can offer him. And then obviously John and Eve, who are not just great people and have given me so many opportunities. John in particular is kind of the reason why I got interested in endurance racing, because I watched the Truth in 24 documentary. Jason Statham was the narrator. That's partly why I watched more than the opening 90 seconds. But then John Hindorf was one of the, people that explains you through the story, one of the voices then of endurance racing as I get a little bit more into it through the years. So it's just between Racing Prodigy and IMSA Radio, I feel very lucky's not the right word. It's kind of imposter syndrome in some ways, combined with luck. But I feel like I missed out on a lot of what other people go through with the grind of broadcasting, right? My grind was sim racing, which I'm in my home studio. How difficult is that, right? I still had my day job. I was making good money as a software engineer. But I never had to go on the road 4 or 5 days a week, grinding out college broadcasts or whatever, low-level club series. I got straight onto cable TV and then straight onto IMSA Radio. So, yeah, I'm lucky, man. I'm one of the luckiest people I know.
And what would your advice be for people that want to try and maybe get into, maybe not commentating as such, but say, for example, sports car racing, like if they wanted to try and get involved in that in some way? So basically, say like pit reporting like yourself, or commentating on Series A, for example. Maybe not commentating straight away, but maybe get involved and kind of like build that experience up. What would your advice be for people that want to get involved in, say, for example, the IMSA paddock? That maybe it could be just volunteering for, like, say, a race team, something like that.
Well, so that's the thing that I've also come to realize is I don't think I was ever one that had the dream of being a racing driver. Maybe it's one of those big dreams of a firefighter, blah, 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 that I threw out there as a kid. But it was never a thing that I genuinely had a thought about, I would say. But in the IMSA paddock, there are... Let's just take WeatherTech as the example, because it will be easier for me to throw some numbers out there. But there were 60 drivers at the track this weekend. There were probably 30 teams. Let's say they average between 8 to 15, and Penske will be bigger when you include some of their other staff, right? So let's say they average about 12 people. It's a lot more staff members than there are drivers. So there's so many different ways to get involved in motorsports. If you're an engineer, I highly encourage you to look at Formula Student or Formula SAE, because that's a great way for you to apply your engineering knowledge in racing while you're still learning some of the concepts. Now, even if you're not an engineer, you should still look at Formula Student and SAE, because they need social media people. They need business people to go out and raise the funding that pays for all the engineering. So they are full race teams in a lot of ways. So if you're a student, I think there's something to be said. Someone in high school who's picking what university they want to go to. If motorsports is truly your focus, maybe look at Formula Student, the program, the university that you're looking at, if they've got a good club program for that. That shouldn't obviously be the only factor in your decision. I want to be clear on that. But that could be something that is interesting to you. I'll take my example, though. I had no training. I went to school as a computer scientist and worked for 10 years until I quit earlier this year as a software engineer, right? So I had one career path, and then I'm very much made a pivot to something that's totally different, and none of my training really prepared me for in any way. So I just really had to kind of be my own worst enemy. And I mean that in the most critical of ways. I am never happy with a broadcast, genuinely. There's probably a handful of broadcasts that I could tell you that I'm happy with how it went. Because every other broadcast, there's one word that I said wrong, or two things that I said incorrectly. Or on this previous weekend, I said one driver's surname incorrectly and accidentally called him by his wife's surname, right? So there's all these little things that I continue to beat myself up about. But in some ways, I think that's made me the commentator that I am now, right? It made me reflect on, okay, if I don't like that I said this thing, how can I say it better? And so the next time that I did it in the 300 broadcasts a year that I was doing, I had the chance to dial in those reps, right? Going back to what we were saying with Lee maybe not needing reps, I needed those reps to kind of build my own style. And sim racing and real-world commentary are actually a little bit different. Because in sim racing you have all the data, especially in iRacing, our timing screens are basically updating in real time. Whereas I've commentated on series where I get an update once a lap when they cross the start-finish line. So obviously your commentary style is very different when you don't have sector times and all of that, right? So there's also just the reality of you're a lot more calm on real-world commentary than you are on esports. There's an expectation, I feel, of us to be a bit more hype and whatnot when we're shoutcasting in esports versus race commentary for real-world motorsports. So again, it's all of these little things that I've been thinking about, right? That I've never had a coach. I've never had someone who's really given me too much feedback. Eve's been one that's given me some good bits of feedback along the way, which have been helpful, especially when I've asked for guidance. But I think really this is an industry where, especially in sim racing, you've got an opportunity to just go out and try whatever you want. I've commentated on every world championship except eNASCAR in terms of disciplines. And I think that's because I was willing to try all the different stuff at a low level as well. So put yourself out there, try the things that maybe you're not so comfortable trying, and never say no to an opportunity until it's not worth your time. And know what your time is worth. Those are both, they go hand in hand, actually. Never say no, but also know what your time is worth.
Yeah. Excuse me. What would your advice be, or sorry, I'll take that back. Have you ever, after, say, either a sim racing broadcast or real life broadcast, so say for example, Porsche Cup North America or a Mustang Challenge, for example, is that it? Have you ever looked back after a race and thought, oh, like basically, I could have said this better, or I could have timed what I said when I said this, and like how do you, and kind of like how do you, I don't know, how do you stop yourself kind of beating yourself up in a way? Because even though it's this podcast and I always listen back and I think, oh, why did I say this like too quickly or too slowly, or why did I ask this question or why was my question too long? And kind of, like, sometimes I get to that stage of maybe like beating myself up too much instead of looking back and thinking, it's like, yeah, you made a mistake, or you could have done this better, but it's not. It's there's no need to kind of beat yourself up to the point that affects you mentally, I feel like.
I'll let you know when I find out. Yeah, no, I'll be open about this. I still haven't figured it out, man. After Sebring this year, I was very disappointed with myself. I'd started the weekend off so well, like it genuinely was trending in such a good direction. Like we had Mustang Challenge, so we were doing some commentary, and I was doing pit reporting. And it started well, and I just, by the end, Sebring is also a tough weekend. I will admit that. I found Sebring harder than Daytona, mentally, physically. it beat me down. And by the end of it, I was beat up, and I was very disappointed in myself. I felt like I should have been better. And John and Eve picked me up. They said, you did great. Obviously, there's stuff you think you could do better. And at that point, they did the best thing actually that they could, which was they said something along the lines of, we're not going to give you feedback because you know everything that you want to improve. And that meant a lot, especially when a couple of weeks later we had the NLS qualifier race that I mentioned earlier. And yeah, that one I got some slack on social media, on some F1 subreddits, I'll be honest. And I let it get to me. There was a couple of nights when I was mentally in a really bad place. But I had some friends who helped pick me up. They knew that I was bad. I was beating myself up. But they said, you did a good job. No one that matters has told you did a bad job. and they did a good job of helping me back up. So I guess the answer really is I've got some good friends who know how to help me out when I'm kicking myself. So that's the only advice I have right now. But I'm hoping that I'll get some better advice for you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first brought this podcast back after, I think it was a 3-year break. I brought it back in January and recorded my first episode back, and basically it was with a friend that hosts another podcast, and I was listening to it afterwards, and I was saying to myself, "Oh, why did I say this?" Or why did I stutter so much? And I was basically beating myself up to the point that it kind of got to be like mental in my head. And like one of my friends, she kept telling me like, "Oh, stop beating yourself up. It's not as bad as you think." And like, yeah, you might have made some mistakes, but like, don't beat yourself up about it. Just move on and just like learn from it.
Yep, but I think your brain and my brain are wired probably pretty similarly in that we kick ourselves a lot, and it's hard not to, right? And so that's what I've got to try and do a better job of. That I don't do resolutions usually because I putting a time span on it seems a little bit silly. But maybe that's something that we can both work on is not kicking ourselves too much.
I mean, I used to worry big time, even with sim racing commentating. I would listen to myself afterwards, and I would hear myself going like or like just stuttering some from time to time, and I kept like beating myself up. And I think it was the Monday Night Skippies League or UK&I Monday Night Skippies League I used to commentate on all the time, which I enjoyed, by the way. But
a lovely league, wasn't it?
Yeah, I loved that league. I remember the phone call from Will Vincent. He was like, I actually just left hospital after getting but it was a couple of my wisdom teeth taken out. So yeah, you could probably tell by the phone I was like, I could hardly speak. And Will was asking, how do you fancy becoming one of the commentators for the UK&I Monday Night Skippies League? And like, I'll put the clean version of what I said on here. I said, I was like, hell yeah. He's like, yeah, if because I thought Will was winding me up at first. I thought, what? I was like, it's not. Is this April Fool's Day or something? I was like, wow. So I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll take that opportunity. So yeah, I really enjoyed commentating on that league because I found that I actually learned so much from commentating on that league. But there was no pressure to perform or do well. It was more just like kind of improve my skills, if you like. So I really enjoyed the commentating in that league, and I wish in a way that league was still around because yeah, it was so much fun.
Yeah, there's. I think I'm quite lucky that in the last 6 years with RaceSpot, I basically commentated on most of the things that we've had, which we've had a lot of really good communities, and that's the thing that I do miss sometimes about sim racing. To go back to me not enjoying the racing. I don't miss the on-track stuff, but I miss the off-track stuff, which is why I still like commentating on some of the leagues. It was nice to do a couple of the Ivers races earlier this year when I had some weekends and the schedules lined up. There's still some leagues that I am actively commentating on. iRacing short course in particular. I love that. I love those cars and that community as well. So that's the thing about sim racing that's really cool, isn't it? Obviously, in this internet world, everyone's able to find their little niches and whatnot, and I love that everyone in iRacing, we have those little pockets of all the different worlds that we have, and it's really cool.
And then before we wrap up as well, looking ahead to the rest of 2026, is there any opportunities in the sim world or real life motorsport that's coming up?
When are you releasing this?
I probably won't release it until maybe sometime next week or.
Okay. The reason I ask is I'm commentating on the Nürburgring 24 next weekend. Usually I try not to announce things before Eve has said anything, but you know I'm hoping that we can slide it under the radar. If you don't clip that part on socials, we hopefully will be fine. Yeah, I've got that I'm excited about because that was IndyCar and the Nordschleife are kind of the two communities that I gravitated to in the sim world when I was a driver, and I not just raced many and NEC as they're called now on iRacing, but I had a league that I ran for a couple of years. I commentated on DNLS for many a race as well, so it's really nice that I'm going to be able to commentate on the 24. And then outside of that, there's some really fun, you know, just things that always pop up, and that's what's cool about now being full-time, is that before, you know, in the last handful of years, it's been difficult for me to kind of, if something came up on short notice, I couldn't always just say yes, because I needed to check if I had work that I would need to do, and I was in a busy time. But now it's like, well, am I already booked for another gig? If the answer is yes, and it's a sim racing gig, can I find someone to cover me? Then it's an opportunity I can go off and explore, right? So I've spent the last couple of months since I quit my job playing too much golf and kind of relaxing after kind of burning myself into the ground for 5 years. Like I said, 300 broadcasts a year, it takes a toll on you, especially when you're producing a lot of those and, you know, doing a lot of the work behind the scenes for them as well, right? So that did tail off as I kind of started doing some more real-world things, but honestly, every time I get to call a race, whether it's real or virtual, I'm just very lucky that this is now my job. I say it every day. I'm at the racetrack. Any day you're at a racetrack and it's your office, it can't be a bad day. It's a fact. It's a genuine fact of life, because you're being paid to be at a racetrack, and in my case, to talk about it. Literally, what more can I ask for, right?
And then, yeah, but actually, before we wrap up as well, what's the one race that you love to commentate on site? So this could be like a sports car race, so by any of the 24-hour races.
Oh no!
I know. I feel bad for putting you on the spot.
Well, okay, so I consider myself actually quite fortunate that you've asked me now rather than this time last year, because I've already commentated on the IMSA schedule. Basically, I can, you know, kind of tick that off the list. Even though, yeah, pit reporting's not commentating, I'll still tick it off. I think it's a very different skill set for anyone wondering. That's what's actually made it so interesting to go back to Laguna Seca 12 months after, is to realize just how much I've learned in the 12 months about pit reporting compared to commentary. And if I'm going to pick only one race, it's the Indy 500.
A good choice. And the Indy 500, is there anything in the sports car world that you'd like to do as well? Or is that more, I mean, like myself, I'm going to the 24 Hours of Le Mans this year, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
No, Le Mans definitely up there, don't get me wrong. But if there's only one race that genuinely, if I was going to be offered a gig for the rest of my life, if I could sign the contract now, there's probably two things I would say yes to. The Masters. If you need someone after Jim Nantz retires, please come for me. I would say yes very quickly. But yeah, IndyCar and the 500. It's a special place. I've been as a fan enough times to realize just how special it is. As someone who didn't grow up watching it, I think that's what makes it different for me, right? Is that growing up in Singapore, I never even knew what IndyCar was, genuinely. The first 500 I watched would have been like 2018. The first 500 that I sat all the way through for would have been 2020. And the first 500 that I went to was in 2022, or 21, whichever it was. It was probably 22. But I just have such a respect for that track and what they do around there. That's one, Ryan, that you should add to your bucket list as well, because that is remarkable.
Yeah. One of my friends that I chat to sometimes, she's been to the Indy 500, and she said, actually, she's been to Indy for the F1 Grand Prix from, I can't remember, I think it was 2002 until, actually 2000, she went to the F1 Grand Prix when it used to get run at, or used to get hosted at Indianapolis. I mean, I went there back in 2006, even though as a teenager, I absolutely loved it. I mean, yeah, it wasn't like the full oval they were racing around, but it was just, I don't know what it was.
Cool.
Just walking through like the front of it, like Indianapolis as you walk in, it just feels, just even now I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It's like, ugh, it's so exciting. It's just, but I would love to go and see the 500 because it's one of those races that I enjoy watching every year. It's just, I don't know how to describe it. It just feels very like historical or traditional in a way.
Momentous.
That's the one.
Everything at that place feels during the event, right? That's the other thing to be clear, is just everything around it, and that includes like the drivers' intros, like everything. It's just there's so much emotion and whatnot around it, and that's what I would love to be a part of one day. Yeah.
And I think my favourite part of Indy is like the pre-race ceremonies. I'll probably butcher the name up. They like they do before the start of the race. Is it Taps?
Taps.
Yeah, Taps. That's the one. I love that.
Again in Indiana, know, there's so many different. The first year I went, I actually missed those opening ceremonies because we got a little bit delayed, and so the next year I insisted we were in our seats, so there was enough time to watch all of them. Because yeah, it was. When I got to see it like that the whole way through, it was very different. I didn't stay for the race last year because I wasn't feeling great and I came back home. But now I got my American citizenship officially, so now it might hit a little bit different to go there and be a part of all of that, right? Because there is so much about the sacrifice of US soldiers on that weekend as well that is part of the ceremony. So, man, you talk about goosebumps. We're already in the month of May. Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
I was going to say but the month of May, and I think it's the Indy Grand Prix this weekend, I believe. So
is it? Oh, I've got a busy weekend.
Yeah, I was going to say I can't remember if it. Yeah, I think it is this weekend. I'm sure I saw something about it.
Because qualifying will be next weekend, and yes, no, you're right.
And then I think it's is it 2 weeks before or something? Like a few days after the GP, they start practice, I think.
Yeah, no, they'll be practicing this time next week. They'll have had a couple of days of practice.
And then later this month as well, we've got the Nürburgring 24. So yeah, the month of May is truly, in my mind, it's fantastic. So before we let you go, Arjuna, is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to, and any socials that you want to plug or promote?
I'm not very active on socials, but I should be Arjuna Kankapati on all of them. And I just want to say, if you're ever at a track and you want to come and say hi, please do stop me. Sometimes I'm very head down and just kind of like thinking about the next thing that I've got to do. I've got headphones in sometimes as well. But I love saying hi to people, even though sometimes I may have a face that doesn't indicate it. So yeah, just hope to meet some more fans at racetracks. It was really nice at Laguna Seca when someone stopped me and we had a good 15-minute conversation on the grid. So hopefully I get a few more of those.
Good stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Arjuna. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, look forward to listening to you do pit reporting on IMSA Radio, or even the commentator on Mustang Challenge. If you're commentating on that again, and yeah, just looking forward to listening to your stuff in general. But yeah, thanks to anyone that watches this on YouTube or listens on Spotify. You can follow the podcast on the socials at Satellite Racing Cast on Instagram, and Sat Racing Cast on Twitter or X. They don't want to get sued by Ellen, so thanks for listening, and yeah, we'll see you around.